Welcome, whiskey consumers. This is Mark from WhiskyWhistle bringing you whiskey review number 38. If you're new to WhiskyWhistle, well, thanks for joining in. And to my current subscribers, again, thanks so much for tuning in again and again. And if you have any comments, please leave them here on WhiskyWhistle YouTube. Also, you can join in on Twitter, also at WhiskyWhistle. Facebook WhiskyWhistle, and if you are Korean, there's also a Naver blog called WhiskyWhistle, or you can search in Korean WhiskyWhistle. Okay, anyway, today what are we going to be looking at? We're going to USA, to Kentucky. We're going to be looking at Wild Turkey 81. What's the 81? Well, that's the proof, the American proof. So divide that by 2 and you get 40.5 ABV. And according to the label, this is between 6 and 8 years old, or a blend of perhaps the bourbons between 6 and 8 years old. So Wild Turkey is a bourbon. Bourbon is a distinction typically given to American whiskeys that have a mash bill. A mash bill is all the grains that go into the mash, a mash bill containing 51% corn. And if you look at the label, I'll bring it a little bit closer for you, you'll notice that this is called, Kentucky Straight Bourbon Whiskey. Straight means that it has been in casks, in new virgin American oak casks, for 2 or more years. However, on the back of the label, which I will read to you shortly, we find out that it is between 6 and 8 years old, in fact. So you're getting something that is 3 times as long as the minimum age requirement for bourbon whiskey. Okay? Anyway, let's get that poured. Oh, and how nice is that we get a cork with our bourbon rather than a screw top. I think that's a nice touch. Although there's nothing wrong with the screw tops. Bring that closer. And it goes. It's about 30 milliliters, maybe a little bit more. This is the second bourbon that I've done. The first one, well, I'll put a link to that right here. Okay? Okay, now then, we're going to smell that right away. It's much younger than Scotch whiskey, so we don't have to sit around and wait too long for that to get busy. Although there may be some changes over time. You know what, I forgot. We're going to put a short advertisement right here. All right, hopefully that didn't annoy you too much. Just to let you know, if you're a new watcher, a new viewer here with WhiskyWhistle, there will be the occasional ad, 1 or 2 per show, and the revenue, if there is any, will go towards new whiskeys that I will review. Okay, so that's the point of that, at least to offset. So far, I'm still paying for 100% of all of the whiskeys that I review here with my own money, not from YouTube. So hopefully someday that'll work out. Anyway, okay, so let's talk about the nose. It's quite sweet, and if you are new to whiskey, this is definitely something that will be very easy to drink and also not too expensive. So vanilla caramels, marshmallows, a little bit of milk chocolate, and then interestingly enough, to bind that all together, a bitter note, and kind of smells like cold tea. Iced tea in USA, which is basically a very strong brewed tea, which could be Red Rose or Lipton, and you leave those tea bags in there for quite a while, and then throw ice in there and drink that on a hot day. As a Canadian, iced tea is usually sweet. So interestingly, when you travel to USA and you order iced tea at a restaurant on a hot day, it's a very different animal from what you get at home in Canada. So interesting. Okay, so we'll taste that one. Cheers, everybody. Big vanilla. Now that is something that you do find in bourbon whiskey. There's oaky dryness there as well. And I've written here orange apple. So there's a fruity component there. A little bit sour, a little bit sweet. Very nice mixture of flavors. Quite a long finish. We'll try one more taste of that. And the finish is also quite long. I do find, though, that bourbons tend to have a long finish, possibly in part from the virgin new oak casks that are being used. So, long vanilla, some honey, a bit of pepper, and some orange rind as well. That's giving it that bit of dryness. Okay. All right, now that I'm going to add just a touch of water to that, not too much. It's already 40.5%, so we don't need to really put in a whole lot of water. I'm going to put in about 2.5 milliliters. Okay, and we'll let that sit for a little bit. And we're going to talk a little bit about wild turkey. This is from Kentucky, which is the largest producer of bourbon. Also, I guess the most famous. When people think of bourbon, they think of Kentucky. And from the town of Lawrenceburg. Okay, and Wild Turkey, it's a global brand and it's owned by a global conglomerate called Campari, which you may be familiar with. That's an Italian liqueur maker. And specifically the Austin Nichols division. And I don't think it says that anymore on the label. Very small letters at the bottom there. We'll look at that shortly. Okay. A Wild Turkey. This brand came into existence in 1940, when there's an interesting story there too. But that's not when the distillery began. In fact, it has quite a long history back to 1869. And I wonder if it says that here on the label somewhere. Here it says 1855. Okay, so well, somebody from Wild Turkey needs to contact the fine folk at Wikipedia, or change the information yourselves, since that's users can edit. Okay, so the Rippey brothers are the originators of the company. They began distilling 1855 or 1869, pardon me. And then it says they consolidated in 1905. And I believe what that may mean is they became a legitimate corporation, a legitimate company in USA. And then they would have continued as such for a number of years until Prohibition. And it looks as though they ceased production. They resumed after Prohibition in the 1930s. 1952, they were bought out by Gold Brothers, and in turn, that was bought out by Pernod Ricard in 1980. Pernod Ricard, if you're not aware, that's a French wine and liqueur company, and they also own some Scotch whiskies, among a host of other brands in the drinks industry. That was 1980, but that's not where it stops. And then, as I mentioned, finally 2009, so about 7 years ago, Campari bought Wild Turkey from Pernod Ricard. I should have looked up how much they paid for it. That's too bad. The name, however, has a very interesting history. Back in 1940, a distillery executive named Thomas McCarthy, he took some warehouse samples with him on a wild turkey hunt, a wild turkey shoot. And after that, the friends that he was accompanied by kept asking for some of that wild turkey whiskey. And so the name was born. So pretty cool, eh? Anything else? Well, recently, May 9th of 2000, there was a very huge fire at the distillery. And in the tens of thousands of casks were lit ablaze. And the fire was so hot that the limestone, some of the limestone, sorry, I can't say that properly. Some of the limestone exploded. So quite interesting. The river, nearby river, was flooded with alcohol. Fish died. People were told not to drink the water. And what a mess that was, and what a catastrophe, and how unfortunate that the distillery just blown to smithereens. Of course, it was replaced, but some people claim that there are some stark differences between pre-fire and post-fire wild turkey whiskey. And in the years that it took them to rebuild the distillery, they commissioned some whiskey from a neighbor distillery to continue putting out the brand. So interesting. And about a year ago, they hired a new master distiller, and his name is Eddie Russell, and there he is right there. Wonderful job, Mr. Russell. Okay. As if he's watching. He might. Someday, you never know. Okay. So we'll have another short advertisement right about now. Okay, so let's get into the nosing and tasting with water inside. A little bit of water added to Wild Turkey 81 proof. And what I find, as always with water, things seem to get sweeter. So more vanilla caramels. What else did I write here? Less of the cold tea note. So that's faded somewhat. And then there's a jelly bean candy sort of a scent. Like if you open a bag of Jelly Belly jelly beans, which are very nice. You can send me some if you'd like. Actually, they are available here, but they're pretty pricey. And also they're made offshore. Okay, and a little bit of oak coming through also in the nose. Like wood smoke. Okay, let's try that with a bit of water. Cheers to Mr. Russell. Good work with this one. Well, bit more orange. And interestingly, it is drier. So it becomes drier with water, which I like. Nothing wrong with dry. They say the abundant limestone in the aquifer really lends to the purity of the water, providing an iron-free spring water, which the industry believes is key to making excellent bourbon. Now, I don't know much about that. I need to try a whole lot more of bourbon to find out more about, you know, the different, the breadth of flavors and the different water sources and so on. Okay. What about the finish? I get more honey, a little bit more pepper, and even the finish is quite a bit drier than without water. Neat or add a bit of water. I like it with water. I like it neat. If I had to choose, I'd probably choose it neat. But I would do that begrudgingly because I think that it's really nice to have you know, a double experience with your whiskey. Okay. All right. Now, what about a score for Wild Turkey 81? Wild Turkey 81, quite poetically, will be given 81 out of 100. And here's what I've written. Nice, basic, straight bourbon. Easy drinking. Good for mixing, but works neat. Sweet style, good for those new to bourbon. New to bourbon. Don't know why I'm repeating myself. Do that sometimes. It's a bad habit. So if you're new to bourbon, this is a good place to start out. It's not that expensive, readily available, and also very well made. Okay. Well, I guess that's about it from me, Mark, here at Whiskey Whistle. I'm so glad you tuned in, and if you have not subscribed, you can just click the little tiny logo there at the bottom of the screen in the corner, below where it says check below for click below for click below to subscribe. I'm sorry, it's inverted, so it's difficult to read. Okay, anyway, so if you'd like to subscribe, just click that little logo and you will be automatically subscribed to Whiskey Whistle, and you'll get more of these funny little whistlings, okay? So have yourself a wonderful evening or morning or night, whatever time of day it is where you are. And if you've tried this, please do leave me a comment, and hopefully I will eventually taste the iconic 101, which is apparently something to die for. So we'll look for that one someday. That's it. Take care now.